Welcome. Welcome to this Wild Goose Publications readings for Lent, Holy Week, and springtime. And it's springtime here. I took a little drive today, and the lambs are in the fields already. And I'm down to 2 layers instead of 4 or 5. So that tells me things are looking up. So I'm Neil, and our Zoom master tonight is Karen. And thanks very much, Karen. That's great to see you. And at Wild Goose, I work with amazing people. I work with Sandra Kramer, Jane Dorick Riley, Gail Ulrich, and Iona Community. And Jane did a lot to organize tonight, and I appreciate that, Jane. We all appreciate that. Thanks for all the postings you made on Facebook and stuff about the night. So we're recording here. You probably get a chance to maybe ask a question or chat with an author or make a comment if you want. We'd like you to if you want, but we're recording it later. It goes up on YouTube, and so if you don't want to be seen on YouTube, just turn your camera off, but we would like to see you. So just letting you know that. The writers we have tonight are Rachel Mann, Martyn Halsall, Janet Killeen, Bonnie Thurston, Richard Skinner, Jan Such Pickard, and Martin Rowe. If I've pronounced anyone's name wrong, I'm sorry about that. It's annoying when people do that. So first up, we have Rachel, I think, Rachel Mann. Rachel Mann is an Anglican priest, poet, scholar, and broadcaster. The author of 11 books. Her work has been shortlisted for the International Michael Ramsey Prize. She regularly broadcasts on BBC Two, Radio 2 and Radio 4, and she's the Archdeacon of Salford and Bolton. Are those biographical details still accurate, Rachel?
I'm up to 15 books now.
Oh, that's good. Good. Don't forget us. If you have a book, you know, you can we'd always welcome you with your other.
I'm thinking of something. So yeah.
Okay. You've of course published Dazzling Darkness and The Risen Dust with us, and that's great. Last time I was talking to you, I think on Zoom, because I like talking about music. I think we talked a little bit about folk, heavy metal, and prog, and I'm wondering if you're listening to any good stuff, any good new stuff these days, or new old stuff, or what are you listening to these days?
Oh, gosh, well, I make of this what you will, Neil, but I am apparently one of the top listeners probably in the world. I mean, of course, you get these stats from various podcasts, or not podcasts, but various organizations that from let's just say it out loud. It's either Spotify or Apple Tunes. Yeah. And I'm a top 500 listener to Karine Polwart. So
right.
I mean, I just adore her music. She breaks me.
Yeah, a great writer, isn't she? Lots of Iona Community people like her, and I think know her a little bit. She's great. My CD player broke, and now I'm down to my cassettes right now, my old cassettes. So today I was listening to, we're talking about kind of prog folk. I was listening to Pentangle.
Pentangle. I mean, oh my goodness, that takes us back into.
It does.
Well,
my cassettes are.
When we were young.
Yeah, when we were young. And my cassettes are so old. I was also listening to Paul McCartney's Venus and Mars too, as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for reading.
Thank you, Neil. It's great to be here. I've got about 5 minutes. I'm going to read, therefore, just 4 short poems from The Risen Dust. This is from the section which is their poems for the Stations of the Cross. Haven't got time for them all. The first one is from Station 2, Taking the Cross. Who teaches the tree its seasons, to wait in its bones in winter, to bleed, weep, and bud, tell the story in rings and girth, the seed, the store of all things. Who can teach him now? Not for him the feel of the plough cutting furrows into the palms of his hands, the taste of snow on a thirsty tongue, how his face too might finally sag with all the stories he's ever told. He is the bee stumbling with its pollen, the swallow dancing in the fowler's net. He is the branch breaking in the storm. He is the way ahead. Simon of Cyrene. All I wanted was to lift you up and walk away, but you grew small, curled down into my hand, nestling like a mouse preparing for winter. How easy it would have been to finish it there, to crush you, to save everyone the trouble, or to run, carry you off, find somewhere dark to sleep, to heal as we dreamed. But no, we walked as they commanded us, you growing tall again. The look on your face as we reached the hill, furious, as if to say, why didn't you take your chance? I love the story of the Veronica, or Veronica, the wiping of Jesus's face. It's not biblical, but just an extraordinary story. Veronica. Let me do for you what they do for the dead. Now, while you still breathe, your face, simple as a lamb's, pleading. Let me wash you into shape, prepare you to be seen, sew back the seams of broken skin, touch you with linen and balm, or wrap you tight in cotton and herbs, hide you from your task, seal you where you can't be found. Later, when you are dead, we shall cut the threads, open the cloth with the delicacy of silk, lifting off that other you, the one you carry now, leaving you clean, your new self. And then finally, Jesus dies on the cross. Wishing he could nestle now in the crook of his mother's arm, the firstborn, the wonder, light as bread, the pearl unexpectedly found, or further back, a sea being, smoke-eyed, a creature of mirrors, darting in shadows, till the trap is sprung, the net raised high, cast on a beach to slap and dance, the business quickly done. But he has become the last of his tribe, deaf to the secrets of words only he knows, gabbling alone, mouth open, no song.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Martyn Halsall is a former journalist for The Guardian and communications advisor to the Church of England. He's written extensively on faith, culture, society, and Lent. His new book, his fourth collection of poetry, is just out on Wild Goose, and it's an amazingly powerful book. Martyn, good evening. Nice to see you. I don't think I've seen you. I've seen you face to face, so it's good to see you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So this is the book. Try and get it on the screen. Called Lent, and it's a collection that looks at Lent as both a Christian season and our lives as something loaned with consequent obligations and responsibilities. And the book also spans a day. So the first poem, the first part, memoir, looks at aspects of biography. It starts at first light, as I cycled to the early shift years ago on the Oxford Mail newspaper, and asks what really is the news that morning. And this poem's called Electric Blue. First light. Bike tires sizzled as the dynamo clicked to the rim and powered up a fitful beam. Wheels within wheels, down side roads to the towpath. Thin dawn seeped back, outlining silhouettes, charcoal of wintering trees, a wash of orange tinting the water to a watercolor as tarmac's hum changed down for wash of gravel. Mudguards lined red and brown with speckled clay. Then 3-speed in top gear along the level, fast pedaling through gathering detail for the early shift to list the radio headlines, clip the papers. The water boatman crews skimming meniscus. A blue flash flared as if rehearsing lightning, setting another gender for that morning. Not that a small bird spearing air would counter the news list with its accidents and inquests. Yet it stayed vivid, still comes to life again whenever the world turns natural and electric. The centre section of the book is 40 poems, all of 8 lines, and that has the label of Lent. And so I'll read the title poem to the collection, and as I say, a short number of short poems. Lent. Lent brings to spring at least a double meaning. Drought time of searching in some wilderness. Also remortgage for each loan of years. Reminder, we are stewards of this yearning season. Paradox, that back roads towards the desert aligned with pioneer blossom, unfolding hawthorn. At 40 days below slate quarry cloud banks, bear miners' lamps of gorse towards thorns crowning. And the last section is a series of poems on the theme of lament, and looks at some people we've sadly lost in recent years, including the Scottish poet and academic John Burnside, whose poetry retains the Catholic pedigree of his childhood. So, a poem in memory of John Burnside, and it's called Requiem. Dusk. When we realize we have never owned this day, but rather it was something lent. Trees meet to weave his name tonight as requiem, and wait, as he might stand inside a wood in border light and stay for night to come, summoning wild creatures always dear to him. He sent out words to question faith at twilight, those echoes from black scriptures and the Mass, that tentative pace towards the sign of the cross. And if we'd met, what more for us to say than what he had written already? Enlightening days, boyhood's creeds always with him like a shade, lightening our darkness, opening those possible years, calling us from the far side of the trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Martyn. Thank you very much. Janet Killeen taught in a comprehensive school for over 35 years. She published poems, short stories, 2 novels, and is a regular contributor to Wild Goose Books. He has 3 books on Wild Goose, Towards Bethlehem, The Road Chosen, and the new one, The Shall Blossom. Spring coming where you are, Janet?
Yes, it definitely is. Lovely day today. Yes, down in southeast London, we see the spring.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm reading from the desert shall blossom. There we are. And I've chosen one from the season of Lent, the traditional season of the temptations being looked at, and another from the actual horror, really, of the steps to the cross. So the first one is called Bread. And I was amazed when I was writing about the temptations, how closely they are linked to the events of the cross. So in a way, this perhaps explores a little bit about what may or may not be in the awareness of Christ when he was in the story of the temptations, tempted by extreme hunger. So this is called Bread. Holding the stone, he might remember the vast millennia of its formation, the jostling of tumultuous seas that smoothed and soothed the sliding rocks, compressing, shaping to this perfect oval, satisfying to the hand, sun warm, a loaf of stone, but hard as the rock-strewn path that lay ahead. Perhaps he shared the helpless hunger of a child, generation after generation of famine and failed harvest, the desperation of the mother, her body's drought of everything but love, or foresaw how the hungry might be fed, a gathered crowd, the broken bread and fish passed out among them until all had eaten. But not all. Not all the endless aching hungers yet to come. Saw too and knew within his racked and famished body's core that one day he would take bread and share it with his friends, a gift of love. Only for him, the bread he gave to them would be as stone, hardened and sullen with betrayal. The one he called a friend ate it and went his way, and it would be an end, as this was a beginning. Perhaps he saw beyond the horror of that evening and the long-drawn day that was to come. He might have seen a road between the hills, the dust stirred by the feet of travellers, heard their eager questioning and welcome to their home, and knew that he would take the bread again, oval and soft, with untold millennia of healing yet to come, of consolations enough for all the hungry and the wronged, the grieving and the weary. He would take the bread and break it for their brokenness, and they would know him. So the other poem I'd like to read is obviously from the Stations of the Cross. It's stripped of his garments. As he was born into the world, naked, except for blood and the waters of birth, so now they stripped him, drawing on that age-old sense of shame, that vulnerability and exposure. And while they gambled for his garments, did they pause to contemplate that seamless robe and wonder at the love and skill that would have made it for him, at the terrible contrast of his helplessness and the devotion that it showed? And as they diced for his death, did they hear the words of forgiveness, that extraordinary gift releasing them and everyone involved in the trial and the horror of it from the dread and blame of generations who would demand wrath and persecution as though they held a mandate for the judgment of God? And now, exposed, most fully revealing the incarnate presence of God, the flesh in which he had glorified God, full of grace and truth. Now, for those who could see, God was naked before them, at one with all the generations of humiliation, the shame of the woman dragged before him in the temple court, the thousands of his fellow Jews naked before their murderers at Babi Yar, most truly one with us. Love and mercy, words of grace and healing, revealed in the extremity of his pinioned limbs, his battered, weary body. Was it this that caused the officer to exclaim, "Truly, this man was a son of God"? Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, you're next up. Bonnie's a very interesting person, as you all are. She resigned a professorship and chair in New Testament studies and now lives quietly as a solitary near Wheeling, West Virginia, USA, working as a spiritual director, retreat leader, and volunteering in a food bank. And she's the author of over 20 books. How are things? I hesitate to ask, but how are things in the United States these days?
Awful.
Okay.
We're doing the best we can.
I think about I think about folk there and the country a lot, having once lived very close to it.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. Well, my poems are normally poems of place or seasonally oriented. So I'm going to walk us very quickly through Holy Week with a series of, I think, maybe 5 very short lyrics. And I also want to say what an honor it is to read with all of you. I feel that I'm 100% out of my league, but it's wonderful to be with you. So the first poem, my full collection with Wild Goose is called Darkness to Eastering. Darkness to Eastering. So this one is called Holy Week. Properly observed, it is a slow greening process, unfolding of the bud buried in every breast. It cannot be hurried, but is hoped for through cold seasons, callousness, cruelties, Calvary in lonely places which can last for eons. Received by reduction, not by adding to, we wait for the bud and the tomb to open. The second poem is called Palm Sunday Procession, and I wrote it in honor of Sister Benedicta Ward, the scholar in Oxford with whom I shared a house for the fall of several years of my life. So this is for Sister Benedicta. Go gently. This is not a rush to accomplish or make good time, to put distance between ourselves and the things we flee. It is time to allow the slowest ones to set the pace, to be attentive to balance and imbalance, which is what it is to walk on the earth. To remember the unseen always walking among us, and that we are the asses carrying the king. Glory, laud, and honor are not in rituals made to tame mystery, but only his who walks before us, waving our humanness like palm branches through the darkness toward the lilies and the light. 2 poems that have superscriptions from St. John's Gospel. The first one is called Vigil, and the superscription is standing near the cross was his mother. It was noisome and nasty at the foot of his cross, a smelly, scoffing rabble, soldiers gaming for his clothes. In the roiling cavalry crowd, his mother stood still, wrapped in her courage and her unique solitude, a sorrow she bore alone. Some consoling women were nearby to comfort, but they could not touch her awful aloneness. Only her son shared it on that terrible tree. The fruit of her womb, knew it deep in himself, entrusted her to his friend, the beloved to the beloved. And then he died. There was a garden in the place where he was crucified, John 19. In point of fact, it was not a green hill far away, but a rocky outcropping outside the city walls, a place from which its terrible trees could be easily seen. Nobody sows seed in such a place. Nobody but God. One doesn't always fall to the earth and die. God, the gardener, can make the cross a trellis which bears the sweetest fruit. Why are you weeping? This is Mary Magdalene. Mary stood weeping, not knowing where she last saw him alive. There he was, framed by thieves. With tear-smeared eyes, fuzziness of great grief, she bends to the tomb she'd seen sealed, experiences the shock of empty space between two angels, then turns toward the unrecognized, his flesh untabernacled, soon to ascend, be the vibrant void pulsing above two gold-winged cherubim by the living mercy seat. But first, he speaks her name. So the final poem is Easter's Shadow, because I think we have to leave Easter and resurrection as mystery. A shadow passes over in windy prelude to warm spring rain. Petals careen from apple trees, blow like snow in wild, fragrant exuberance, an explosion of blossoms signaling life returned. The cosmic grain of wheat has fallen and died. That death is requisite for all this flowering is the passing shadow of impenetrable mystery. Hidden in the lilies is a darkness to be left undisturbed.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, Darkness to Eastering is Bonnie's book on Wild Goose. And if you're wondering what the website is, it's www.ionabooks.com. And if you buy a book, thank you very much, because it does a lot to support us and help us keep going. Thank you. But now is an opportunity to actually win a free book. You can win a free book. I'm giving a book away. And if you get the right answer to this question, email your answer to Neil, Neil, at ionabooks.com, Neil at ionabooks.com. And if you have the correct answer and you're the first person to get the correct answer, and I'll probably won't check till Monday, you get a free book. And you just have to tell me who is the author of these lines. Nothing is so beautiful as spring, when weeds in wheels shoot long and lovely and lush. Nothing is so beautiful as spring, when weeds in wheels shoot long and lovely and lush. And hey, you could look it up on the internet right now. I'd never know. So I do that with friends when they give me song lyrics and things like that. Anyway, don't tell them. Richard Skinner is next up. Hi, Richard. Richard's. Hey, you're a Londoner by upbringing. You're in Devon, I think, and you've published several collections of poetry. Invocations is one on Wild Goose, and there's some downloads too that you've published with us. Thank you very much. You're a former member of the Cambridge University Footlights, and you occasionally perform sketch-based comedy. Have you been doing any comedy lately? I'm interested in that.
Yes. I did a two-man review back in November, and I do open mic stuff from time to time. So yeah, I'm still doing it. The Cambridge Footlights is over 50 years ago, so it's but I'm still writing new stuff from time to time. Yeah.
You ever come down to the fest, to the Edinburgh Fest?
I did a gig at the festival in, gosh, when was it? 1993. I came up with a poet friend, so we interleaved one-man comedy from me and
Yeah.
two-man poetry from the two of us. It was one of those experiences which I think a lot of people have. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. On one occasion, my friend Chris, his wife, me, and my then wife, we outnumbered the audience. It's still good. It didn't mean if they rushed the stage, we'd win.
Yeah, the festival's like that sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yes, I know. But it's good fun to do it. Tiring, but good. Yes.
I always look forward to it. Anyway, nice to see you. I'll just let you take it away whenever you feel like it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Hello, everybody. Many thanks for joining this evening. It's good to do an online reading. I'm going to read 3 or possibly 4 poems. The first 2 definitely come from another Wild Goose publication of mine, Colliding with God. The first is a short poem called Accident. Colliding with God and wearing no seatbelt, he suffered extensive injuries to his life. They say he is not the same man since the accident. God, too, did not escape unscathed, but received nasty wounds to his hands and feet and a deep laceration in his side. His condition is said to be critical, and a full recovery is unlikely. Neither party is covered by insurance. The Eucharist, communion, the Mass, one of the vital parts which was instigated towards, obviously, around the time of leading up to the crucifixion. So this is a bit of a modern take on that regular Christian festival. Stale bread. The bread was stale, and I wonder, was your body stale? The wine was Sainsbury's best, and I wonder, was your blood Sainsbury's best? No neat equations, no analytic laws identify stale bread and Sainsbury's best with body and with blood. No statute of the state, no rule of thumb can justify the logic of the altar rail. And yet, the wisdom of the intellect at the rail must confess the splendid ordinariness of stale bread and Sainsbury's best. As well as a couple of titles published by Wild Goose, I've been included in a couple of their anthologies, one of which is In Love with the Life of Life. Forgetting the title. In that, there are 3 sonnets of mine, 3 temptation sonnets, each one focusing on one of the temptations of in the wilderness. And so I'm just going to read one of them. And this is written from the point of view of one of the stones in the wilderness. The stone. I am the stone which, had he so chosen, would at his command have changed into bread, satisfied hunger, though far from ambrosian, 40 days banished of going unfed. I know I was tempting, my colour, my shape, lying nearby and so easy to grasp. I swear that his mouth was just briefly agape as he visualized eating me, his voice a harsh rasp. It would have been weird to be what I'm not, Stone is my nature, and stone I remain. To change me to bread would have robbed me of what is truly myself. Myself would be slain. He resisted, respected my right to be stone, and that all I require is to be left alone. And finally, just a few verses from a long poem which is in Colliding with God, called The Utterly Staggering, the Story of the First Easter. And it's written in the same rhythm as the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. These are just a few verses to give you the taste. And it's when the disciples were gathered together, wondering what was happening. Later on, when it was dark, 2 weary travellers burst in. You'll never believe what has happened. It sent us both in a spin. We were well on the way to our village when this stranger appeared out the blue. He asked us a shed load of questions, then claimed it's the scriptures come true. We had to hear more, so we asked him to share in our food, just some bread. He took it and broke it. Just amazing. It was Jesus come back from the dead. The disciples were still in an uproar when into the room stepped the proof. Evening all, Jesus said, how's it going? And they practically shot through the roof. How'd you get into the room? Cried Peter like someone accursed. Through the door, said the Lord. And Peter exclaimed, it's usual to open it first. If you want to know what happens after that, it's in
By the book. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. So Jan Such Picard is a poet and a storyteller living on the beautiful Isle of Mull. She's a former warden of Iona Abbey, former ecumenical accompanier in Israel, Palestine, and she's published a lot on Wild Goose, several books out of Iona, between High and Low Water. Those 2 come to mind. How are things in Mull tonight? Can you see the moon making a path across the sea to the Abbey or glinting on the sea? Is it cloudy? Is it springtime in Mull yet? Lambs out in the field? What's going on?
I think this is Neil weaving a poem. Yes, as I look across my screen, I can see the lights on Iona. I can't see the moon yet, but I'll go out and have a look for it for you afterwards. I live very near to Iona, but not in Iona. I can't forget the time that I spent working there. In fact, before I was warden of the Abbey, I was the deputy warden at the MacLeod Centre. So the MacLeod Centre, which is in an in-between state at the moment, stays in my mind. I can't forget it any more than I can forget a glimpse of Gaza when I was an ecumenical accompanier. There are some things that stay in your mind and shape your life. So just outside the MacLeod Centre, anybody who's been there, and you can put your hand up if you like, there is a sculpture of the fallen Christ, which was made by Ronald Ray, a very distinguished worker in granite. It's coming to Iona was enabled by Jim Hughes. And I happened to be there on a winter day on the Mull side of the Sound of Iona when a lorry with a crane came down to try to cross the Sound, the wild waters, to take it into Iona. So that's where the poem starts, on a winter day. And then there is a piece where I have time to go and I look at it as many people look at the sculpture in the place where it was deposited by that crane, where it fell to earth. And the last short poem is after Easter, when a group of kinship carers came to stay at the Mac, and I watched a child playing on that sculpture. So 3 pieces in a sequence. Heavy weather, heavy swell in the sound. Will the ferry run? We stand on the wrong side, frustrated and chilled to the bone. Low clouds scud by, crows and gulls, gale blown. Below us on the shore, the great split rock is dumb and going nowhere. On this wild and grieving day, the greedy wind snatching our breath away. But we've come carrying a credo, a carving in stone, which is on a journey, is finding its home, a heavy burden that cannot be set down ever until it makes land where earth and heaven touch. And now, being human, being absurd and real, we feel the difficulty and pain of crossing over with such a weight of love to keep our word. Fell to earth here. Fell to earth here, like those erratic boulders brought over from the Ross of Mull by the ice sheet, covering a few miles in centuries of scraping, grinding, sliding, painfully commuting before finding a footing on Iona. Rosy granite and grey, nice, out of place, and yet at home. So this block of stone from Kemnay, far to the east, quarried, commissioned, carved, came on a long journey, taking years, resting here, welcomed there. It was never a dolorous way, except for the last day, when gale matched grief and doubt about surviving this last mile of wild water. But care of Calmac made it across and fell to earth here. Hit the earth hard, and now it hurts. Jesus is falling under the burden of the cross, carrying our mortality, the concentration of our fears, crushed under the weight of all those words of hope and blame and power we lay on God. Jesus is falling slantwise, like salt rain before the gale, like sweat, like tears, falling in silence under a grey sky and with barely a witness. A stone from a long way off is pinning him down here on muddy earth in a field of cows, against the fence, outside the vallum, the boundary of blessing, on common ground. The glacier of time crawls on and melts. The stone has come to rest where it will stay, while generations pass and pause, deciphering the story, seeing the skill that shaped the faith that carried it across the water, the love that moved maker and made, carver and maker, to this stray stone. So this stray stone found its place in the universe, falling to earth here. And the last poem, sitting outside the MacLeod Centre in the sun with one of the groups that regularly came up, kinship carers, coming for a time of respite, but since they brought the children that they cared for, it wasn't entirely restful. And I sat with them doing some passive smoking, because a lot of them did smoke, looking around, looking at the beauty of the sound with the spring sunshine on it. And a child came running out, ran past us, and started climbing on the sculpture. Child's play. Sun burnishes the granite, a blessing on the stone, making it warm as human skin, but still as hard as bone. Sculpture of the fallen Christ. Like an erratic boulder, a child at play has clambered up to perch upon its shoulder. She rides upon the solid rock, joyfully, safely there. Rough stone supports her hands and feet. The wind plays with her hair. I see a place of refuge for a troubled little girl. God's back being broad enough to bear the weight of all the world.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Final reader tonight is Martyn Rowe. Martyn lives in North London. At one time, he was on the staff of the Independent and the Observer, I think, as a former chair of the Greenbelt Arts Festival and a regular contributor to BBC 4's, Radio 4's Thought for the Day. Author on Wild Goose of Julian of Norwich's Teabag, which for me wins the best title award lately, I guess. Well, not that other titles aren't good, but I mean, Martyn, we had a good time last year on Iona. You, me, Meg, Helen, at the Wild Goose Publications Week. You and Meg were amazing at enabling creativity, and so thanks, and that's a good memory. And I just want people to know that there's a Writers' Fest on Iona in the autumn. I can't remember the exact date, but if you're interested in going to a week on Iona, that might be a good one. I'm not sure who all the authors will be, but I'm sure there'll be some Wild Goose authors there. Anyway, it's just something you might want to do if you want to go to Iona. Okay, I'll hand it over to you, Martyn.
Thank you, Neil. Just to say, one of the great things with the contemporary Lent is the improving quality of non-alcoholic beer. So here's a little poem I've been working on recently, which is about Lent. It's called 40. At winter's end, it may begin. The sun is low, we long for spring. The daily quest, the wrong direction. A 40-day course correction. Apply the brakes and turn around. Set the sat-nav to stranger ground. The sign is drawn upon the forehead. Quite soon, it seems, we'll all be dead. While holding on and letting go, we enter the fast where we slow. Look up, look out, and look inside. Find the lit bush, then turn aside. A light still burns in all this darkness, joy and grief in this bright sadness. The calendar, a sacred circle, winding threads in the colour purple. And then another little short one, maybe this one is a bit more about spring. It's called And Also With You. If I had not made time earlier today to pause in the breeze, to be still among that small company of trees, I would not have noticed how they were all bowing shyly to each other. I would not have heard one of them whispering through the leaves, "Let us share a sign of the peace." I'm sure that's what I heard. And then the chorused refrain, "Peace be with you." "And also with you," I replied, to all of them. And also, and also, and also with you. And then I'll do a little final one, a bit longer, which is called Easter Revolution. The Easter Revolution will not be televised. It is not captured on CCTV, but because it's captured in the heart. It's not a big event in history. It's too big for history and also too small. The Easter Revolution is a beautiful disguise. It is brought to you by a woman in a flowing green dress facing down the riot police and a shirt-sleeved man standing before a line of tanks, but also in the patience of the person serving you on the supermarket checkout and the devotion of your neighbour to her child, the one people name different. It is brought to you by those who are seldom heard and routinely overlooked. In the fields, someone picking coffee; on the sea, someone in an exodus; and in the forest, a nun gunned down for protecting the trees while reciting the Beatitudes. "We're not burying you," say her fellow revolutionaries at the funeral. "We're planting you." No one notices as the subtle bud rises quietly from the dark earth, or as someone, turning away from the powers that be, kneels to write something lowercase in the sand. It is the quietest sound, this revolution. It is almost not there, like that ever-flowing stream somewhere, not far from here. The Easter Revolution takes no one by force, except the force of love, which is no force at all, and the greatest force of all. It is the revolution we long for, but can't quite name. The one that is undated because it's every day that ever was. The one that is usually unseen, but always, at every moment, hiding in plain sight. Thank you.
It's a good one to end on, Martyn. Thank you. Anyone got any, does anyone have any question for the authors or a little comment or anything? You can just like put your hand up. You don't have to. I mean, I'll try to look through, I'll scroll through and see if I can see. I'm maybe not so good at this, but I'll do my best. I'm doing my best right now. You're all lovely. Yeah, there's a lot to think about in all those readings, quite dense. I don't see anything, and that's okay. That's good. It's all right. So I just wanted to thank all the writers and everyone who came tonight to the Zoom, and everyone who buys a Wild Goose book. And thanks to Karen for being the Zoom master. And I'll just do the email or do the website address again. Just do the marketing thing. www.ionabooks.com. I'll just take a wee look through one more time to make sure I've not missed anyone who wants to say something.
Well, I expect in company with everybody else, many thanks indeed to you, Neil, for organising this, and indeed for the Wild Goose people in general for facilitating these sorts of events. It's a good way of getting in touch with, even across the pond, fellow authors. So thank you so much for organising it.
Jane did a lot to organise. So
thank you, Jane.
And the other Iona Community communication folk, Leanne, put stuff out, I think. Anyway, so I wish you a meaningful Lent and Easter and spring. And thanks again for coming tonight. I think we're done. Have a good evening. See you again.